All right, my name is Romus Broadway. I live on Birch Avenue in Princeton, and the house that my mother purchased in 1942. I was born in 1939 in Greekstown, New Jersey, on a farm owned by Duncan Campbell, who was a dairy farmer. My father was a helper there, and we moved into Princeton in 1942. Princeton has always been a very fond place for me. It was a mixed community, and half of my street were Italian Americans, other half were African American. I went to a Princeton nursing school with some friends that I've been friends now with for 73 years from Princeton nursing school.
Wow.
I went to college at age 34 to the University of Massachusetts in 1973, and I worked as a research assistant part-time for a professor over at Harvard after I had almost completed my studies at the University of Massachusetts. On this big snowstorm in 1979, we were marooned. We couldn't go anywhere. So I had to find something to do. So a friend of mine, Roland Glover, had showed me a collage at Princeton earlier that year. So I began cutting people out and putting them on this poster board. And about halfway through the night, nostalgia overtook me because I'm cutting out people who I knew. Some were deceased, some were not. And I said, wow, I need to go on with this. And then I started making another one. And by the time I came back home in 1980, I would put photographs of people, especially kids and older people, on this cardboard in the Coffee Cup restaurant, which is owned by Peter Young and his wife. And I learned a lot of people would come in to see themselves on the photographs I put up in there. And so then this led to just capturing everybody. So I would get old people, young people, African American, Italian, everybody I would get from the neighborhood, and just photograph their picture and let them see it. And after I did a third collage, I began to see a community coming right before my eyes. This is why I then decided now to do collages specifically. I would do children, the older people. I tried to get as many of the older persons as I could. Now this was starting in 1980. I came back home. I got a lot before I went away in 1970, but I tried to get most of the older people that I could, who I know would no longer be here. But when people see their photographs, they remember them. And this led to a further thought down the line about I'm seeing these people who have worked years building the community of Princeton who never got credit for it. We had, in the community, you had Irish, Italian American, African American. They worked at the university, they helped build it, the building, the plants, they maintained it, and then they worked in the dining halls. And very little money, but many of them sent their children on to college. So that taught me something about perseverance. It showed me then a way the parents did in this community. I'm talking about the Irish, the African American, and Italian American, what one can do if you put your mind to it. And then I began to know their parents. I knew their parents growing up as a child. And you remember them always going to work. And then they send their children on to college. And then once the children went on to college, they rarely came back to Princeton. So then people would not even know of what those parents and sacrifice they had made for their children. So these photographs, when you look at them, my collages, who is that? Who are his children? The story is right there.
What did your family, like your immediate family or folks that were close to you, think of the collages throughout the years?
Oh, very much. Very, very enthusiastic about it. And especially my older sister. And she said, she told me, you don't, see, and very soon you're going to have something that you don't realize what you got. I'm realizing what I have now. As I kept doing collages, every answer came out. For a demographer, it would be a delight. Because the way the community is now, I'm sitting right in this building. This is the only social place we really had to go as children. Because in the telephone book, there's the YMCA for the colored. But yet there's an Irish American family, the Kavanaughs, who live right behind there. They're always here. There was a guy now, a person now on John Street, on Witherspoon Street, named Crosby Kirkjohn, he was always here. I didn't realize the significance of that until I went away to college, of how people can coexist and get beyond the minor stereotypes. And so this is what I see jumping off those collages. It answers the question for society. And if you want to put a face on this community, look at my collage. You can't tell what it is now because John Street, the John Witherspoon area, was poor. But many were attached to the university. And many went to church. So we would see the Italian Americans going to church, the African Americans going to church. We knew the Irish Americans were going up to St. Paul's Church. We knew what everybody did. So as a child, you don't understand the significance of that. But when you become older, become more stable, you understand that, and it gives you the push to go on. It helps you understand people much, much better than you would. You learn from yourself and not just take the party line when somebody gives you, this is what you should think about this person. Because you can remember how people were. You can really think about yourself and do your own thinking for you.
How do you define dedication?
Oh, dedication, very easy. You look on the collage, and the parents who worked like that, menial tasks. Listen, once again, Irish American, Italian American, African American, they all suffered slights, insults, but they worked with their hands, and they used their minds to strategize position for their children, where they could help them move to the next level. And they used their hearts because they were forgiving. You could not have been forgiving. You could not have been well-mannered and be forgiving. To be able to forgive, you don't forget what you forgive. And they had to do that because of the insults that they had faced in their fronts. Look at the older people whose children went away to college or were working now, and ask them what did their fathers and mothers do, what kind of work did they do. You have persons that have gone from here to the White House. There was a reporter that worked in the White House who used to go to this YMCA for the colored, and he went to Witherspoon School for the colored. You have a surgeon who's retired now, cardiovascular surgeon. His father was a janitor at Princeton. He went to Princeton. And then he went to the Navy and became a professor of surgery at University of Rochester and was a chief resident surgeon, heart surgeon. And his brother, who used to climb the fence at Palmer Stadium to go to football games and hide under the stadium until the game started, eventually became the baseball coach at Princeton. And Dr. Rivers eventually, his father was a janitor there. He couldn't stay on the campus during the first year because of the attitude that wasn't that friendly, let's put it that way. But after he graduated, he then became a member of the Board of Trustees. We have a gentleman named Mr. Reeves, whose grandson, Jim, is a graduate of Princeton. Mr. Reeves was a cook at the Tower Club. And eventually, Jim Floyd Jr. became a member of Tower Club and on the Board of Trustees. So we look at those processes from the servant class to the ruling class in a short jump. But this is what the parents dream for their children, so they didn't have to say yes to everything, so they could say no. But you have to have perseverance in there. And what better lessons I've learned. I looked on Birch Avenue. There are over 50 children from Birch Avenue whose parents worked in service industries, went to 40 different colleges and universities at least. You have children from Birch Avenue whose parents were in the service industry, waiters, chauffeurs, butlers, laborers, PhD, lawyers, architect, and about 30 kids from Birch Avenue, the street I live, became teachers with a variety of degrees. That's just Birch Avenue in Princeton. So what my collages capture, all everybody I'm talking about, they're on those collages. So that's why I say a picture worth 10,000 words. There are a lot of words on my collages. And the questions there begging to be asked. When people see them, who is that? They can get oral history because the primary sources here are tremendous.